Joining us now to break this one down, the two-time Super Bowl champ, Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, it is not often that we start a segment talking about the kicker, but that's exactly what we need to do right now. Dustin Hopkins simply stone cold 3 for 3 on a bum quad. What'd you make of the kicking performance in the ultimate game winner?
Well, I'm not surprised. You know, that's what I expect from my former no brother, Dustin Hopkins, coming from Kicker U, by the way, because Graham Gano is doing a real good job for the Giants as well, and we saw what Hopkins was able to do with a bum quad, as you mentioned. Every opportunity he had was clutch for the Chargers because offensively they couldn't get anything going. You know what I mean? So I never kicked before a day in my life, especially in a meaningful ball game, but I would assume it's very, very difficult to do when you're nursing an injury to your legs, to your lower extremities. But they needed him. He came through in the clutch, and that was the deciding factor in the Chargers winning an ugly ball game. Because both teams, in my opinion, at one point in time, Joe, I felt like it was only right that this game ended in a tie. I feel like both sides did not deserve to win, based on what we saw in 4 quarters of play going into overtime.
To the kicker goes the spoils, and I cheated him one. 4 of 4 after that game winner. Accounted for 12 of the 19 points here scored by Los Angeles. We got to talk about both of these quarterbacks, but let's start with the winning one. 37 of 57 for just 238. That's 4.2 passing yards per attempt here, or per completion, B-Mac. When you take a look at the talent, the arm talent, the execution, everything that a guy like Justin Herbert brings to the table. Where's the disconnect right now from that talent level and putting points on the scoreboard?
You know, that's a good question because you can't question, individually speaking, how talented he is as a quarterback. We've seen it in the small sample size with Herbert being a starting quarterback in the National Football League. We've seen flashes, but so far this year, we've seen more downs than ups. And I think there could be a disconnect between the offensive scheme, play calling, and what he does best. And, I mean, both quarterbacks struggled. You know, we've seen Russell struggle the entire year. But I felt like going against this type of defense, yes, it might be some struggles for Justin Herbert, but he seemed to be a bit off. I don't want to say he's still nursing an injury because, of course, when you step on the football field, your job is to ball out. Your job is to be productive. But something seems to be a bit off with Justin Herbert. Luckily enough for him, he had Dustin Hopkins on his side.
That he did, and he came up big. The kicker winning the game after a muff punt. And it really was the only way anyone was moving the ball here in overtime. No first downs in an overtime in which both teams possessed the ball. It was a wild one. It was messy, and we'll get to some of that messiness and decision-making in a moment, but we got to talk about Russ as well. Looked good in the first half, really spreading the ball around, 10 for his first 10 to 9 different receivers. But second half and overtime, 3 of 11 for 15 passing yards. I was ready to sit down and talk to you about a turning point in Russell Wilson's season, but instead, we're sitting here talking about the same struggles for number 3. What'd you see here on Monday night?
Man, the kitchen was open in the first half, and unexpectedly, they closed the kitchen. And I guess Russ wasn't aware that he wasn't allowed to cook anymore in the second half because that's what it looked like. Yeah. Like you said, first half, it was like, oh my goodness, this is the Russell Wilson that we thought we would see in a Broncos uniform. Doing some real good things, moving around in the pocket, you know, orchestrating passes to different pass catchers, very, very accurate with the football. And we saw a passing touchdown. Granted, the wide receiver, the tight end was wide open, but he was able to do some real good things on the road. And then the second half, they just flatlined. He flatlined. They couldn't do anything. And their defense gave them more than enough chances to put this game away. You can't put this loss on the Broncos defense. I understand they surrendered that game-winning field goal in overtime, but they balled out. They did everything in their power, plus more, to give their offense an opportunity to earn their keep, but they were not able to do that. And it starts and stops with the quarterback. Russell Wilson is a future Hall of Famer, still in his prime-like years, based on his age. But for some reason, ever since he's joined the Denver Broncos, this Russell Wilson has looked uncomfortable. And if you go back to his rookie campaign, right, in Seattle, that Russell Wilson looked 10 times better than the Russell that we're seeing right now. I don't know what's going on, but clearly there's some disconnect between what he's accustomed to doing and what they're calling there in Denver right now.
2-4, it's a big loss. A win would have drawn them closer to the Chargers here. Obviously, the Chiefs are at the front of that conversation in the division, but 4-2 are the Chargers, and plenty to clean up and Both sides really got to clean things up quick. It's week 6. You should be figuring it out. You should be executing. We're talking about 19 total penalties for 240 yards. And when we saw a bunch of the replays, it wasn't a lot of ticky-tack stuff. They were penalties, B-Mac. When you take a look at these two head coaches, the job that they've done through 6 weeks, decision-making, execution, in your opinion, are either of these jobs in jeopardy right now?
I would say no.
Okay.
Nathaniel Hackett, still in his first year trying to figure things out. Clearly, he seems to be the one coach, the one rookie coach where the lights are a little too bright for him. But, you know, he still has an opportunity to correct his wrongs going back, getting ready for next year. And then when you look at Staley, I would say no. You know, they're 4-2, but it's so ugly. Mm-hmm. My goodness, that's an ugly 4-2. But, you know, seeing what they did last year, currently being 2 games above 500, you know, his job is safe as well. Now, if something happens throughout the season where they just totally miss the mark, then that's another topic of discussion. But right now, both coaches are okay. Nathaniel Hackett, like I said, I don't expect to see the Broncos fire him after 1 year, even if they have a flop of the season. And the same can be said for Staley, you know, in this second year.
B-Mac, before we go, I know you got to give out a game ball here, and it's likely to go to a guy who is just locked down here in Pat Surtain. Not a whole lot to get excited about. And I know you want to give it to the kicker, but we got to give a shout out to a defensive back here who held Mike Williams, the top target, to 2 receptions for, I believe, 17 yards. Can you build off of something like that? I know you want to build off of a quarterback-type performance, but if you're in that defensive room and you're continually holding teams under 20 points, what can be said right now? Is this something the Broncos can build off of, this type of performance, not just from the defense, but from this individual specifically?
Yo, Pat Surtain is a baller.
He's nasty.
You know, during our pregame show, we highlighted Mike Williams, and I think his over-under receiving yards was around 67 and a half. And I had Mike Williams on my fantasy on one of my teams tonight, and I said that's under because Pat Surtain is going to follow him. Pat Surtain is a beast. He might not get the interceptions that we're seeing some of these other big-time corners get, but what he does is every week he effaces the opposing wide receiver that he's following out of the game, and he does it so easily. I mean, he's a guy, he was born to play cornerback. He has the length, he has the technique, the fundamentals, the speed, and the confidence. And he's a quiet assassin. He doesn't say one thing, doesn't give you one body expression. He just goes about his business, and he does it week in and week out. And that man is a beast. They're tired. Let's keep it real. The Broncos defense can go. You know what I mean? And you talking about, is this a positive? Yes, it is a positive. But I can tell you this, though, Joe. Eventually, their defense is going to get tired of just carrying the entire team. Because last time I checked, there's only one potential future Hall of Famer on that team right now in Denver, and that's Russell. And so far, Russell has been dropping the ball in regards to doing what he was supposed to be doing when they brought him in. So hats off to Pat Surtain. I'm not surprised. I'm starting to learn this is who he is as a player. He's clearly a top 2 corner in the National Football League right now. He is a top 2 corner. You can put him at one or number 2, but he's not outside the top 2 based on what he's done so far this season.
Cornerbacks and Seminoles. You know I got to check my B-Mac boxes here on HQ. Thank you, Mac. We'll see you in week 7.
Shout out to Hopkins.
That's it. It's all Knowles, and it's all things covered as well. P2 and B-Mac sitting down with some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment for can't-miss conversations week in and week out. Download, subscribe, and enjoy all things covered.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.